The question to go back and renegotiate.
Well, bluntly, it's one of the naiveties of the coverage of the entire negotiating process from the first day that we somehow swallow the idea that signals from Brussels tell us how things are going to work. Of course, we're in a negotiation. Of course, they want us to accept this dreadful deal. I mean, the deal is very, very favourable to them. So, of course, they're going to say to us, we're not going to accept any changes.
Okay, but the negotiations are now over, and we shouldn't forget that you were at the helm of that process for all but 4 months. But this is the document, 585 pages of it, that has come back at the end of this lengthy and difficult process. And you are saying it is perfectly feasible for us to reopen, both sides to reopen the whole thing again.
Yes. I mean, you say the negotiations are over. That's nothing like true. First off, let's understand what this is. This is the withdrawal agreement. It barely includes a proper future partnership. So the negotiations are not over. And let's be clear, the European Union has spun this out deliberately to try and use time against us. It will get to a point, I'm quite sure, when it'll be very tense and people will be very nervous about the way negotiations go. But European negotiations are never over until they're concluded.
And they have been concluded.
Well, no, they haven't. I mean, since when? I mean, who's agreed it?
The Commission on behalf of 27 member states and our government.
Well, our government, except that my successor as the Brexit secretary resigned because he doesn't agree with it. Another cabinet member resigned because he didn't agree with it. Other cabinet members are being silent about it, and all sorts of rumours are flying around Westminster about who else is going to resign. So that hardly sounds to me like an acceptance. What that is an impasse. And we are at a position at the moment where we've got this proposal on the table. It is a dreadful proposal. It really does not fly by any measure. It doesn't meet the requirements of the British people. It's not what they asked for when they voted. It doesn't meet the requirements of the Conservative Party manifesto in the last election. So it's not a deal that we should accept. The European Union itself has things to lose by not having a deal at the end of this. We have to challenge them. We have to take it to them. Simply rolling over and being supine about it, rolling over and say, oh dear, we're frightened of the outcome, is not the way to run a negotiation. One of the problems of this negotiation from the beginning has been that we have been too willing to accept what the European Union signals and not test it.
Do you include yourself in that? Because for the bulk of this process, it was your job.
I strongly recommend you go back and read the resignation letter I wrote when I left. I point out in that very clearly the times I've said to the Prime Minister, this is the wrong way to go.
What should happen to the Prime Minister now? What does her future look like as far as you're concerned? Jacob Rees-Mogg very clearly said yesterday that having thought for a long time that it was about changing the policy, not the personnel, now feels differently.
Now, with the greatest respect, I'm sitting in a room in Washington. I do not get into criticism of the Prime Minister when I'm sitting abroad. That's an old convention which I'm afraid I take seriously.
An old convention?
Yes, a long-standing one. The Americans as well also obey it when they don't criticise their own president when they're abroad. And I take the same view.
We are at an acute time for the country. You're a serving MP, you're a former Brexit secretary. There are very real questions now about what happens, and you're saying that you're not going to give a view on the Prime Minister's position.
From the beginning, I've said I want to deal with the policy on this matter. And the policy we have to deal with is going to be rejected, I think, by the House of Commons. Then the Prime Minister has to come up with an alternative.
She's wedded to this policy, which is why I'm going to ask you again. Well, you are very angry about the policy. Is it not time then
Tell me. You say she's wedded to the policy.
Well, she said that yesterday. I'm going to see this through to the end.
Well, sure. We all of us serve the people, and we all of us have to accept the outcome of the House of Commons decision on. And when it rejects it, as it will, then she'll have to go back and renegotiate it. And she'll have to do it, I think, on the basis that we've talked about before, which is the approach of seeking a free trade deal which actually meets the concerns that I've raised.
Between now and March 2019, you think it is conceivable to start again and to renegotiate that free trade deal in 4 months?
Yes, I think the thing to remember is that all of the European Union negotiations go to the last minute, not to 6 months before the last minute, but to the last minute.
And if you're wrong, then it is either leaving without a deal, isn't it, or extending Article 50 in order to try and get to the position you want?
Well, I think extension of Article 50 will be very difficult, bluntly. I mean, I don't think there's an appetite for it in the United Kingdom, and it would require absolute unanimity from the other side. It's the most difficult. No deal? Nobody prefers no deal. It's not the best outcome. But as I've said many, many times, it's not something to be terrified of. We can manage it. We can deal with it. It's the second best option. It's much better, I'm afraid, than the options in front of us today.
Have you seen what's happened to the pound and what's happened to shares in London, particularly companies particularly exposed to the UK economy?
Well, I would be very wary of making a judgment on a day-to-day pound or financial market.
No, but what do you think, if you're suggesting that it is credible to continue negotiating, to open up that again, to go closer towards the prospect of getting to March without no deal, what do you think is going to happen on the financial markets and to the pound?
We've always said that there will be a turbulence in the markets sometimes as we get to the end of this process. That's almost certain anyway. It's going to happen anyway. The issue here is what sort of deals we want. We want a deal that gives us back control of that country, gives us back control of our borders, gives us back control of our laws. This deal does not do that. And saying, oh, well, the financial markets are going to be volatile over the next few months is not a reason not to do it.
David Davis, former Brexit Secretary, thank you. Well, listening to that is Danuta Hübner, who's